Oh no. Okay, I'm gonna say words and hopefully they work okay. So, hi everybody, I'm Miss Dutters. I'm one of the school counselors here, and we are using a mic because we're also broadcasting this online. So we have 27 fun attendees online. So cute. And so for our attendees online, well, actually we have a slide for that. So I will just take a pause and say hello and welcome to our College 101 night. Hopefully I click things correctly. Okay, so today we're going to go over a little bit about graduation requirements, types of colleges, researching colleges. A lot of this is pulled from our presentations from students, so we wanted to align what we show you, what we're showing our students to what we're showing you guys, so that you're all on the same page in terms of how we navigate the college process. For our virtual attendees, we're monitoring the chat as we are presenting. So us four counselors are juggling a couple things. So just we're recognizing that we're juggling a couple things. Okay.
All right, so we'll start by introducing ourselves. I'm Mallory Newman. I have students with last names MARI through PIG. Sorry, for our virtual participants. And that's it.
Okay, sorry, and I'm Miss Dutters for students with last names PIN through Z.
Hi, I am Kinsey Hadeen, and I work with students with the last names FIN through MARG.
Hi, my name is Erica Wynn, and I have students' last names A to FE.
Cute.
All right, so college is a lot. Totally get it. So I just want to do a quick check-in with everyone. So one of our staff members has this adorable cat named Fred, and so let's check in on a scale of Fred between 1 and 9. Where are we at? How are we feeling about working with the student through college? How are we feeling, Thursday night? So, just put a finger up, fingers, how you're feeling,
For the college process.
For the college process. When you think about FAFSA, when you think about college essays, when you think about how much college costs, where are we at? All right. Okay.
It's a journey. Thank you.
We do this with staff also, so we make our fun. Oh my God, Mr. Vance just missed it, but it was Fred. Okay. We should go back for Mr. Vance. We made a scale of Stacy's cat friend.
Mr. Vance also has a senior.
Yeah.
And so, Mr. Vance, where are you at with the college application process as a parent?
Oh, well, you're crazy.
Man, I'm chill. I'm the bottom right.
9.
9.
Hi, hopefully you're all feeling the night. Perfect. Okay, so like we talk with our students, we want to try to reduce anxiety. We're trying to give as much information as possible many times throughout the year to y'all and your students to try to reduce the anxiety of applying for colleges, because it does feel like an overwhelming process that they do outside of their academics, which is a lot. Cool. So when we talk about graduation in every single presentation that we do, with students and with families. And we talk about these 4 buckets of graduation. So students do have to earn 24 credits to graduate. They have to fulfill a graduation pathway, complete their high school and beyond plan, and complete 60 hours of service learning in order to graduate from Yale Public Schools.
Share. This microphone stitch is
The Microsoft Stitch is fun and new for us. Okay, so just to kind of walk through those credits. Every student needs 4 years of ELA, English, literature, all of those are synonyms for the same thing, so that English class. They need 3 credits of social studies, 3 credits of math, 3 credits of science, 1 credit of art, and CTE, which is career tech ed. So those are like our wood shop, our auto program, baking and pastry. If they're in any kind of business marketing class, those are all our career tech classes. 2 credits. This has not been updated. I'm just gonna stand here and be like, this is a little bit weird. The 2 credit is actually for art. I'm sorry, it's for health. So they need 1 semester of health and then 1.5 credits of PE. So apologies that this is we didn't do that one, but that's okay. So how this can be a little bit funky is a lot of our students will participate in a sport, and so they waive a lot of their PE credits. And you can waive 1.0 of that PE credit, but 1 semester of PE needs to be completed on campus. And then the rest of the credits are electives. And
One of the things that gets kind of confusing is we have a lot of communication out there that the world language being required. It's not a required class for graduation. They can do something called a personal pathway, which if you've seen The Office where Michael declares bankruptcy, it's as simple as choosing another class for your personal pathway. So it's not a graduation requirement. They really can just take another class. That is different than the college entry requirements. So for college entry, they do need 2 years at a minimum of the same world language. So if they've taken French 1 year and then they switched it up and went to Chinese, they need to go through it a minimum of Chinese 2 for college entry. And that is changing as we go. And many of our more competitive public schools are asking for a 3rd year of a world language. The same is true of a math or a science. So the minimum requirements for college entry is 3 credits of a math or science, but the secret, if you were going to talk one-on-one with an admissions person, is that they would prefer a 4th year of a math or a science. And then for the UC schools, they have to have 1 credit of art, so we put that up there as well. Additional graduation, oh, is there a question? Oh, cool. Graduation requirements are our pathways. So a graduation pathway is, they have to complete a state test to graduate as well, but to meet that requirement, they can either pass the test or take a college in the high school or college level course in high school. So all seniors are in a college level English class because they're either in English 101 or AP Lit, or they can take, so for math, they can take AP Statistics, AP Calculus, British and College Math, or Business Math would all also fulfill that, or a specific CTE pathway. So there's a couple other ways that we can fulfill that, and we can meet with your student. We meet with all students who need a graduation pathway, not by passing it through the state test as well.
All right, so when we're talking to students about life after high school, we try to remind them that there are so many different paths that you can take, and we covered that a little bit in the PTSA meeting previously, but tonight we're going to focus more on traditional college, or sorry, 4-year college route, which is the majority of our students go in this direction, but we also present all of the other options to students as well. Okay, so these are the when we say college, that can mean a lot of different things for our students. The 3 main buckets are going to be community colleges, 4-year colleges, and then trade and vocational schools. Community colleges, this is becoming an extremely popular option for West Seattle high school students because of the Seattle Promise Scholarship, which we'll get into a little bit later tonight. But with the community college, this is traditionally thought of as a 2-year school. A lot of times now these institutions are actually bachelor degree granting institutions, but traditionally community college, 2 years, you get an associate's or transfer degree, as well as a variety of different trade and technical programs. When we're talking to kids about 4-year colleges, this would be a 4-year college university. This is where you're going to earn your bachelor's degree. What we're seeing a lot of students doing now is they're doing the 2 years at the community college with Seattle Promise, and then they're transferring to like a UW or Western, but a good amount of our students also still go straight into a 4-year college. And then also with some of our students, they are done with academics and they just want to work with their hands and get some certifications. And there's lots of different routes they can take, including trade schools, apprenticeships. We're really fortunate to have Brian Fitzgerald as our career connected learning teacher here. And literally his job is to connect students with jobs and internships and different trade and technical programs. So usually if we're working with a student and they're expressing interest in a trade school, we'll refer them to Mr. Fitzgerald and they can work more directly with him to get some plans in place. And then Seattle Promise. So as we just mentioned, this is an incredibly popular scholarship for our students. This allows students to basically do 2 full years at a community college completely free. This is an agreement between the Seattle colleges, so South, Central, and North with Seattle Public Schools. So the only requirements are really that you graduate from high school and that you take advantage of this scholarship immediately upon graduating. So we get the question from students a lot, you know, could I do a gap year and then do the Seattle Promise? You can't. You have to enroll immediately upon graduation. But these are kind of the to-knows, especially if you're a parent of a senior. This is what you'll want to have on your calendar. So February is the deadline for the students to apply to the college campus. So if they're going to South Seattle, they need to apply by February. They also need to complete the scholarship application, which the scholarship application is available on their website. So students have to have applied to the college and completed the scholarship application by the February deadline. They also need to have completed either their FAFSA or their WASFA by April 30th. So they have a little more time on that. And then they're required to attend a readiness academy in the spring. And so if they complete all of those pieces, they're eligible for free tuition, which is a really big deal. And we are fortunate to have a Seattle Promise liaison who works with our students. His name is Bradley Llewellyn. He's here 1 day a week, every week, to work with our seniors. His contact information is on the screen right there. If you're interested in connecting with him, don't hesitate to do so.
Okay, so we're just going to touch on apprenticeships and trade schools. So we want to recognize that there are other pathways for students, and we want to be able to provide those for them as they continue through high school and try to figure out what their passions are. And so we do encourage apprenticeships, especially in Seattle. There are a ton that students can take advantage of, whether it's maritime, City Seattle Lights, construction, what have you. And so again, plugging Mr. Fitzgerald, a great resource for students to connect with him to earn credit for internships that they may find, and also connecting to mentors or professionals outside of school to mentor them through the process if they wanted to go into a trade or a profession. Another thing too is that we are planning, last year we had an apprenticeship and a trades fair. And so that's something we want to provide for students again this year. We might do a big fair for students to just meet other professions. Another option would be to also do smaller workshops. So if there are particular trades that students were interested in, we may connect them to the coordinator so that students can learn more about how that process works.
Searching colleges. Okay, so we have been working with students in our weekly workshops in Miss Hopkins room 135 at lunch on Tuesdays. We're making a plug now. But on Tuesdays at lunch, we are working with students to look at narrowing that list of colleges so they have a sense of where they should apply and what feels like the best fit to them. There's lots of different tools that we use and help them use to kind of whittle that list down. But things that we talk about with them are like the environment of the school. Is it an urban setting? Is it a rural setting? Is it somewhere in between? We talk about campus culture, the cost of the school. We do spend some time with this in our presentation talking about that initial tuition cost and what that can really mean with the terms of financial aid, in-state versus out-of-state tuition, the WUI scholarship, and things like that. So we kind of break down what a cost of a school might actually be, as well as academic programs, the kind of education that they're looking for, and then where they feel like they can really explore who they are. And so we can do this with things through Naviance, like the Super Match, and different tools to help students understand what feels like the best fit for them. Okay, cool. So key questions that we talk about is how hard do you want to work academically? I think a lot of students initially feel like I want to apply to the best and go to the hardest school I can get into, and having that moment of reflection with them about what's our goal in the next 4 years? What feels like the right calling to you? And thinking about, do we want to start at a 2-year college and then transfer with a transfer degree to a 4-year college if we're feeling not 100% prepared for the 4-year route? We also think about a lot of students come to us and like, I have no idea. I'm not sure. I don't know what's next. And so we're encouraging all of our 12th graders to apply for the Seattle Promise. It's an exceptional opportunity that our city has that most cities don't. And so we encourage all students to apply for the Seattle Promise. It's totally free. And like Ms. Newman said, Bradley is here on Tuesdays to help our students do this. But we talk about applying for Seattle Promise as a backup option. And then we are encouraging our students to come on Tuesdays to our workshops to do further research. We have regular college visits. We also had a very large college fair a couple weeks ago. And so we're trying to provide opportunities for our students to get to know and get in front of different folks in different schools. UW is coming next week to talk to all of our students who are interested in UW to share more information of what that can look like and what UW actually feels like. And then we're talking about academics and all those good things.
Okay, so again, how we start the conversation is by narrowing it down based on fit. So all of these kinds of slides that we have, our next couple are around questions of fit. If every college has a biology program, what else is important to you? And so that is really where you start that conversation. And that can be around exposure, taking to different campuses. We encourage all of our students to go to SPU, SU, and UW because you have a small, medium, and large school in Seattle, and just to kind of understand what those campus experiences are. So the next couple of slides are all of the questions that we roll through with our students. Juniors get this lesson in the spring, so in May, and they're all college campus questions, all of those things of like again, every school is going to have some major. So if the primary drive is I want to go into aviation, that limits what you do, where you go to college. But if you're like, I just want to go to college and I'm still trying to figure it out, then it's all these other questions that a student needs to ask themselves to be able to identify that campus culture. And when a student is doing a good job of identifying what they want in a college campus and working on fit, then you are doing a better job for them to ensure acceptance. Because a college is looking for a student that is looking for them, which is like, again, a little bit challenging in terms of narrowing down the thousands of colleges that are in the country. However, if you can find a couple things that are important to you, and these are all of those questions that we walk through with our students, and we use ourselves as an example. So I was from San Francisco, wanted to be Supreme Court Justice, needed to go to a small campus because I wanted to talk to my teachers, and I wanted to study abroad. That narrowed me down to quite a smaller group of schools. And where I ended up at Lewis and Clark. And that was about like being on campus and knowing a couple key things for me. Whereas the rest of you all went to big schools, and that was kind of a big piece of that experience, is understanding those campuses. I don't know if you want to go.
Sorry, I was jumping.
Okay. But these are all questions that are around fit. So these slides we walk through students with and they're posted online as well. We also have in the back an opportunities booklet that our students get. And there is in there a little guide that's like, how do I rank the things that I care about the most? So the challenges that kids are like, except they don't always know Goldilocks, but they think there's like a college that's like, if only I can find it, it's the perfect school for me. And there's like 100 schools that are the perfect school for our kids. So what are those other factors? We then have them use Naviance, I do think it's actually like Naviance.
Navigate.
Naviance. And for Supermatch, this is one of our college search activities for our students, where they are walking through those specific questions. So location, academics, like admission, diversity. Do you want it to, what are those like components of the racial background of the school? Does it need to have a Quidditch team? Like, what are really the things that matter to you? Because those are a part of your student experience. And that is one search engine. What's nice about this is it'll allow them to compare themselves to admitted students from West Seattle. So it'll actually create a scattergram of their GPA relative to students who've been admitted to those schools from West Seattle. We also have them go through a website called Big Future, which is the College Board's search engine for colleges as well. But those are all the pieces of fit that we walk our students through. Is there any question about that so far? Big Future. Yeah. And we do that in part because they'll already have an account with the College Board through their PSAT and their SAT. Yeah. No, we're doing this, this lesson we will do with our juniors in the spring. What we have done with our juniors so far is the kind of the first part of this lesson that is around how do you start the search, what you should be looking for, what kind of campuses to consider. With our juniors, we're going to go through, will you go back a slide? We're going to do this with our juniors in January. Were there any questions over here? Andrew. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what senior year looks like as far as the timeline and what your students should be taking care of, because a lot happens in senior year. As we mentioned, junior year, you're kind of exploring. We're doing some of our initial lessons, but senior year is when we're coming up against deadlines. So this slide, if you want to take a picture of this, also we're going to make these slides available afterwards. But if you guys want to capture this,
So basically in September, we're asking students to kind of organize everything. They're making their lists. Naviance, another plug for Naviance, makes it really easy for students to stay organized. Naviance sort of acts as a single portal where kids can add their schools. All of the deadlines will show on the homepage. It'll say exactly what they need. So another plug for Naviance. They're ordering their transcripts. They're checking to see if colleges require SAT scores, which most don't now, which has changed. They're asking teachers for letters of recommendation. Some of our teachers end up writing, well, we as counselors write close to 40, 50, maybe even more than that for our kids. A lot of our teachers write that amount, maybe more. So some of our teachers will ask students to let them know in the spring. Like I know I'll use Miss Patman as an example. I think she writes like 15 letters. And so she tells her students, hey, come to me as soon as possible. If you want me to write a letter for you, let me know spring of your junior year. It's kind of first come, first served. So, but generally speaking, our teachers, this is part of our job as educators. We write letters of recommendation. So they'll be willing to support. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, you're talking to teachers and then you're just kind of organizing your deadlines and you're getting started. I think a lot of students also get so overwhelmed with the idea of applying to college. It seems like this big thing. All you got to do is just start the online application. You can work on some of it, save your progress, return to it later. And that's what's happening in October. So we've sort of spent the last month running these workshops for our students on Tuesdays, helping them with their applications, revising their personal statements. That's all ongoing through the month of October. And then November is when you're going to start to see some deadlines. So yesterday was a big day for a lot of our students. November 1st was an early deadline for a lot of schools. The UW deadline is November 15th. And then you'll see other deadlines typically kind of through December, January. Some are as late as February and March. But kind of once we start getting into the holidays, we're seeing lots of deadlines. And then that's when things sort of shift into, we tell students, you know, fall is applications, winter and spring is scholarships. And we usually advise students, you know, apply everywhere you can. And we'll figure out the finances later, like get those applications out. You can apply for scholarships in the spring. FAFSA doesn't even open until December this year, which we'll talk about that. But yeah. Oh, yes. And then we're having a financial aid night here on December 6th, if you want to go ahead and mark your calendars for that. So that's all happening in the winter and spring. Students are applying for scholarships. And then typically May 1st is the confirmation of attendance deadline. So students have up until May 1st of their senior year to let their schools know this is where I'm definitely going. Okay, any questions on timeline? Yeah. Sometimes as early as December. Which in some cases, you know, they'll just say, we're deferring your admission. We're not ready to make a decision yet is pretty common. But yeah, you'll hear back pretty quickly. Depends on the school.
Oh, yeah, yes.
So just so our online people can also hear the question, is the question around testing and the requirements for testing. I actually, if you could hold your horses, we do have a slide on that. Okay, you can like circle back if you're like, that was unanswered. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so colleges will, so the question is, well, oh, sorry, I interrupted you. Continue.
That was part of the question. Like, there won't be any senior grades to submit with those November 1st deadlines, but I think I have seen they do want to see updated transcripts later on.
So the question is, many of our colleges have applications due in November. So what grades are they seeing? And that is correct. They're only seeing grades through their junior year. Colleges won't see a grade until February, around mid-winter break, when the first semester grades are completed. So that's the first set of grades a college will see from your senior year or student senior year.
They do ask students what they're currently taking, so they take that into consideration. But this is a great example where if a student applies early and they hear back in December or January that they've been deferred, a lot of times the colleges will say, send us your semester 1 grades in February, which is motivation for the kids to not get senioritis and keep their grades up. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's super stressful with the start of school and them doing their courses. I'd encourage starting to apply in that junior summer where you have a little bit of relaxed time. As the kids are doing their homework, you start to hear like, oh my God, I feel like I'm doing a full-time job. This is too hard. My classes, my coursework is too hard. And it's because they're trying to juggle applications at the same time.
Pro tip. So the pro tip for our online crew was to start the application process early, which is what we talked to our students about in May.
Okay, so the components of an application. So students are asked all kinds of questions either through Common App or they're applying directly through the institution. They'll be asked about their academic honors and activities. And so this can look like being part of the National Honor Society. It can be like the bowling team, I think, had like the highest GPA. The district's like got a cute word for that. So any of those academic honors can be in there, as well as activities. Thinking about activities, we might talk about this later, but that is things that students do outside of school or sports or clubs inside of school. And something we try to encourage our students to do is think about depth, not breadth, which is a hard word for me to say, but we encourage students to follow their passions and be truly passionate about what they're doing. So rather than doing like 8 clubs and just attending briefly all 8 of them, we ask students to attend maybe one club that they really care about and do one volunteer opportunity outside of school that they really feel passionately about. Because that not only like helps them grow their passion, but it also lets the colleges see what they truly care about and helps them feel more focused in their application. So that's academic honors and activities. Standardized test scores are something that is sometimes included in applications. Back in the day, like when I applied to college, they were the thing. I took the SAT 3 times. However, now we're seeing that after like a post-COVID world, we're thinking that standardized test scores are oftentimes more test optional. So fairtest.org is a great website that we use for students to check out whether the colleges they are interested in require an SAT score or an ACT score or any kind of standardized test score. So some students will put their SAT scores on there and sometimes they won't. A pro tip is that UW said today to one of my students, we absolutely do not want to see your SAT score unless it's like really fancy high, like over 1400, and then that will be it. It's our last case scenario. If we need a tiebreaker, we'll look at your SAT scores. So a lot of them are thinking we don't need to look at them. Letters of rec. Just like SAT scores, some colleges require letters of recommendation and some don't. Like UW does not require a letter of recommendation. We're seeing that more and more schools are kind of getting rid of that. But we do write, like Ms. Niven said, like 50 at least letters of recommendation every year for students. The personal essay. So I feel like we all try to emphasize the personal essay in the application. It's one of the most important elements of an application, and it's something that we definitely encourage students to start in their junior year and spend time in their junior summer looking at. They will, at the end of junior year, in their English class, be starting to write their essay, and then they will revisit that in the fall with their senior year English class teachers. And so this personal essay is something that we have workshops around. We actually just this Tuesday had like over 30 kids come to our personal essay workshop and have adults in the room read their essays and get feedback. I would encourage you, if your student is either junior or senior, to spend time reflecting on this. I think something that I notice is a lot of students are like, what do I write? And they just start writing and they haven't done very much reflection yet on what they really want to convey to the colleges. They're just trying to find the good story. Supplemental essays. These are typically shorter essays that are included in some applications, definitely not all. And they will be like maybe around 250 words versus like the 600 word category. And these sometimes students will spend a little bit less time on their supplemental essays because they're focusing on the big dog. But we encourage students that oftentimes colleges are looking for the quality of writing in these supplemental essays, and they'll be a little bit more targeted. Like UW has one that's specifically around diversity and how will you bring diversity to the campus. And then lastly, the college interview. This is definitely, I think, something that's phasing out, but some colleges will have a student meet with like an alumni and do an interview round at a college, but I think that's rare.
Okay, how to apply. So we recently simplified it for students, and so there's 3 common ones that students complete. So there's the Common App. A lot of schools, especially now the public Washington schools, are using Common App. How it works is you create one big profile, and you can add all the colleges you want, up to 20, I believe. And then that colleges will just get that one application. There might be extra essays they have to write depending on the college, but generally speaking, one application gets sent to as much as 20 schools who use the Common App. The next one is Coalition, which is very similar. Specific schools use this one, same format. You create one application. There are certain schools that use this Coalition app, and then you can submit those as well. The last one is college specific. So what that means is that you can apply directly through the school. So you go on WSHS's website, they say directly apply to us, and you can apply through that one school instead of having to do that huge batch application. The incentive there is that there are schools like, I believe Lewis and Clark, where if you apply directly to the website, there's incentives such as scholarships available to you. So there are pros and cons. Oh, free to apply, sorry. Wazoo, for example, Wazoo does that. Like if you apply direct to us, there's like $1,000 scholarship for you if you do that through them. So just different options there. Okay, early action and early decision. So the difference is that for early decision, it is binding. What that means is that if you are 100% sure you want to go to that school, then if you get accepted, you have to go there. It's a legal contract. So for example, if you decide to not go to that school, there may be a penalty fee for breaking that contract. So if your student is considering early decision, definitely think about if that's truly the school they want to go to. It is difficult to compare financial aid packages because once you get accepted, you have to go there. But there is incentives on doing that because they will consider your admissions more and they make more scholarships available to you. For early action, it's the same thing, but it's not legally binding. You can go early, you can sit on the admissions if you get accepted until May 1st, and it gives you an easier time to be able to compare financial aid and scholarship packages. And again, similarly, it increases your admissions if you decide to do early action.
Okay, we did speak about this a little bit, but the personal statement. So these are begun in their junior English classes in the spring. Depending on if your student is in AP or not, it can happen after the test if you're in AP, if your student's in AP Lang. And then it gets picked up again in the fall in their senior English classes. But this is 100% the essay where like they'll start, what we tell students is their first draft saved for their scholarships because their first draft is typically a little bit moodier. And then as they refine and refine, it gets more appropriate for the colleges. They have a lot of space in class to work on this. They do not have as much space just because they're working primarily on this for the supplementals. And it is the biggest kiss a kid could give to themselves on the cheek or the face to have this done as they walk into their senior year. Ideally, we'd like them to have a pretty solid draft of what colleges they are serious about as they leave their junior year. So, and then activities that we walk them through. We have a checklist for them. I think we have a couple copies of that in the back, as well as on our website, for other things to be doing. But the personal statement is typically about 500 to 600 words. The Common App has prompts that are posted in the spring. They could use the prompts from this year. They very rarely change. If they change, it shouldn't significantly change how they respond to it. We do, so for our juniors, these are our current workshops for our seniors. So right now we're in our senior season. So this is an example of what we're working on with our current seniors. And then in the spring, we start something very similar to this, but a little bit more targeted in terms of like, how do you start your search, finding your fit, questions like that. And then we'll do those in late May, early June for our junior students. And we just ask them to start building their list. So they should have, we say like 4 to 6. Some kids like to do 15. We'd say that's a lot of applications. I think sometimes students get this feeling like the intense anxiety of that I won't get in anywhere. So I'm gonna just apply everywhere. But we really do want you to have our students to have a narrowed list, because they really should have that fit piece more narrow for them. So a couple schools that are reaches, a couple schools that are matches, and a couple schools that are solid solid acceptance. Seattle promises a delightful backup for everybody because it's 2 free years, and that could potentially be $120,000 worth of savings, which is a lot of money to save. So that already gives everyone a solid, likely acceptance. But we do ask for students to build their list. All right, so let's talk a little bit about testing. So most schools now are test optional, and we saw this, basically the pandemic disrupted everything. Students couldn't take the SAT, but even now, a couple years out, a lot of schools are still remaining test optional. Like we mentioned today, UW is not really going to look at scores. So it's really nice for students because it takes that high stakes test down a couple notches. So our recommendation is to students, you might as well take these tests because we offer them for free. That's also changed within the last decade or so, that a lot of public schools now are offering the SAT on campus. Probably back in the day, you guys might remember going to like a testing center and you had to pay to take it on a Saturday morning. It's really nice that we can now give it to students within the school day. So we as counselors usually recommend to students, take the PSAT for practice in your junior year, take the SAT October of your senior year, see how you do. But if you don't do so hot, it's not a make or break test like it used to be. And then the other tip we give students is make sure that if you are sending your scores to schools, if you're very proud of them, you do want to send them, you as the student have to send them directly from the College Board. So we can't include them as part of your transcript or any part of it can't come from West Seattle High School. It has to come straight from College Board, which is why we encourage the students, especially like juniors who just took the PSAT, if they have a College Board account, they can log in, they can check their scores, they can send their scores from their College Board account. So those have to be sent directly from College Board. All right, and then as far as transcripts, we get so many questions about this every year. How do I request my transcript? I need it sent to the college. So a lot of schools will ask students to self-report their grades on the Common App, for example. So that's where students are just referencing their transcript and then they're plugging their grades into the Common App themselves. To do this, they can either reference their historical grades in the source. It contains everything that their transcript does. Or they can just request a copy of their transcript anytime from the counseling center in room 214. Miss Burns is our secretary. She can print one on the spot. As far as official transcripts that need to be sent directly to colleges as part of the application, there's 2 ways students do this. They can either have them sent through Common App, which basically if a student applies to a school through the Common App, we will send their transcript on their behalf. They don't have to request it separately. It's part of the school report that we upload as counselors. So for Common App, if they're submitting a Common App, there's nothing more needed. We will send the transcript on their behalf. However, if they're applying direct to the institution, like we talked about with like UCs or maybe Lewis and Clark, you'll want to make the request through Naviance. So another reason to familiarize yourself with the Naviance portal, because they can request electronic transcripts to be sent through Naviance as well. Any questions?
But I think that some of the applications are asking along with your transcript of whether or not the school was weighted or unweighted. And I think that just means that you have like AP classes that bump up your grade. But some schools don't do weighted. What is West Seattle?
Great question. We don't, and most schools are moving away from that. So back in the day, our college is asking for weighted GPA. Is that a thing? That's a great question though, because that used to be a thing, very much so, and they would get the extra point. And technically the weighted GPA does still exist. It just doesn't show up on their transcript. It used to also be used for class rank, which that used to be how we determine our valedictorian, salutatorian. That is not the case anymore. So when we're reporting through Common App, we basically tell the colleges, hey, we don't do class rank. We don't use a weighted GPA. All we report
is their unweighted. Yeah, huh. Okay, yeah, and some high schools do still use weighted GPAs and they rank their students, but I find that becoming less and less the case. Yeah. Great question. So the question was, when you take the PSAT and the SAT here at West Dale High School, how soon do you get your score? Scores actually just came out today for the PSAT. And then SAT, oh, and SAT came out today as well. So usually it's pretty quick. Yeah. Oh, question here? Yeah, so the question is if colleges are moving away from test scores, moving away from letters of rec, what are they using to evaluate an applicant? The answer would be definitely the personal statement, like we talked about earlier. That's a very important part of the student's application. Also just the student's resume and the depth of their activities, not the breadth. So as a student, you know, have you been involved in community service in your community? Are you a part of clubs and extracurriculars? Are you on a sport? But it's more like, are you on a sport and are you maybe captain of that team, as opposed to I'm on 8 different sports teams and I'm constantly busy. They want to see higher levels of involvement with fewer activities. But generally it's their resume and their personal statements that carry a lot of weight.
And I just like have a personal friend who is a application reader at Stanford. And so her insight is that the personal statement, like Mr. Min said, is super important. The supplemental essays, I think, are becoming more and more important, specifically on how the student is applying specifically. Like, I think, especially, I just read a bunch of USC supplemental essays today. I think they're very specifically looking for a student to cite something that they've done that then will connect them to the major that they want to pursue, or the mission statement of the college about diversity, or that kind of element of writing. And then the last thing that my friend has shared with me is that the activities list, it's like you're creating a bulleted list of things that you've done for that club or activity, and they are looking for very specific examples around what they are doing. I think kids are just amazing, right? So I think more and more we're seeing higher levels of community engagement and doing different outreach projects. I just had a kid who created a whole like microplastics recycling campaign for their neighborhood. And so I think they're looking more and more for students to engage in that level and that way and articulate that through the activities. Unless about the FSC, yeah. Okay, letters of rec. So we are fully in the letters of recommendation season. And so we ask that if students have to write a letter of rec, which they can see by checking the Common App application or the direct application link, they can see if they need a letter of rec, that they ask 3 adults, a teacher, an employee, and an employer and a community member. Some colleges will just require 1 letter of recommendation, and oftentimes that's the counselor letter of recommendation, and sometimes they require more. We ask that students ask at least 3 weeks in advance. It's great practice for a student if they want to ask a teacher to go in person and ask the teacher. We start like, hey, how's your day? And then ask them for a letter of rec, and then follow that up with an email being like, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I really appreciate you writing a letter of recommendation. The deadline is here. I'll send you one friendly reminder, smiley face. I think something that we encourage students to do is remind their teacher once and not every time we see them, like those lovely skills. And if they need a letter of recommendation from us, on our website at the bottom is the counselor recommender packet. And this is a very important packet that we use to draft our letters of recommendation. We all have over 400 students. And so having those specific examples, like I do feel like we work hard to know our seniors, and also having some of those specific examples that we can pull into our letter of recommendation make them stronger.
You're up this class rank in addition to weighted GPA is not a thing. So SPS policy is that we do not rank students. And so as students are completing college applications and there's a section that says, does your school rank? They'll just say no and just move on. All right. That was a lot. I keep getting the checking ones. I like this. That was a lot of information. Now I know how your students feel. It's totally fine. I just want to remind everyone that this is recorded. So, do your best to remember as much as you can, but we will be able to post this later so you can revisit it with your student and go over any other questions you may have about the college. So, being in high school. Okay, so these are for parents. And so these are just the common terms that we will go through with students in high school and in college. So course selection. So for both high school and college, this is where we will help students register for classes next year so that not only are they taking classes that is high school graduation requirements, but we also try to talk to students to make sure that the elective classes that they take is geared towards their career path or what major or subjects they want to pursue after high school. GPA. So definitely prioritize that. So, checking with your student maybe once a week, once every other week on how their grades are, checking the source, maybe having a sit down with your student to log into Schoology and asking them to explain each assignment that's due for that week. And if they can't explain it to you, make them go talk to the teacher to get clarification. It is helpful. Activities. We love students to be more active outside of the community or out in the community, whether that's sports, working, babysitting, joining a club, joining a sport. And so colleges now love to see what students are doing outside of school. They want to see how students are displaying their skills and their passions in other activities outside of school. Academics is one part of them. They want to see more. And so definitely encouraging your student to be involved at some point in high school. So we talked about the essay, and so students will be drafting personal statement essays spring of their junior year as well as into the fall of their senior year. So it's a great time for you to sit down with your student to talk about certain topics that they may want to talk about. There are general prompts that college essays will ask students, but it's just good to have a couple of options just so then as the student is going through high school, summer and activities, they can start clicking with certain topics that they want to talk more about in their college essays. And of course, just continuous conversations about college, whether it's where do you want to go, how much it can cost, what are your goals in college, and what do you want to plan on doing after college. And so those are just timelines to talk about. And of course, visiting college reps and fairs. So we just did a college fair this fall. I believe the Seattle city fairs that they do, there'll be a spring fair. Is it usually at like SPU?
Sure.
One of the local colleges in Seattle also hosts college fairs. And so that's a great time for your students to be able to go and just see other schools that are available to them. And we will continue to have college reps come to our school to talk more about what they have to offer. I believe we had Central Washington today, and then we'll have Western in the next couple of days. Next week.
Yeah. Oh, question back here. The question is, yeah.
So the question is there a list or a calendar of when colleges are coming to visit? I believe that's still being drafted. We still are reaching out to colleges who want to come and talk to our school. So when that gets finalized, we'll send out a new list for sure. Yeah, so the question is, can I just write basically one essay for all college applications, or are they all different? So it's both. But generally speaking, most colleges, their prompts are around what's an accomplishment you want to talk about and how has it influenced your career path or your career choice. And another prompt is what's an experience that really impacted you as a person? What did you take away from it, and how do you plan on applying that in the future and at college? So those are generally what the topics are about. And then depending on the school, especially the supplemental essay, they'll be more specific about diversity or what does it mean to be a leader and things like that.
deadline for turning their assignment. It's pretty easy to find all that information through the documents or,
Big future.
yeah.
So if I understand it correctly, the first question is around deferments and if students want to take a gap year and if that's easy to find through those websites. And then the second part of your question was around the app deadlines?
Yes, like, or
Yeah.
different colleges have.
Yeah.
So how easy is it?
How easy is it to filter the deadline? If I'm being honest, I think that when the application is due is probably the least item that is what colleges are trying to advertise. So it's not, it's certainly on there, but I don't think it's like November 1. However, you know, Google does have that. Like you could be like, which colleges are November deadlines? Or like which colleges don't need a personal statement, which there are a number of colleges that are like that. For deferments and gap year, it gets pretty specific. So it's something that like, even if it was on a search engine, I would just recommend a student go directly to the college and take a look at it or reach out to the college, the admissions rep themselves, which is like low key their scariest step, but also like the chillest because the admissions reps are just like so nice. They're just want to talk to people. And we practice like, I'll practice doing the scariest thing of like calling Harvard and just like not saying my name and just be like, oh my God, I have a question. And then they can just see that it's very easy to do that. But I would reach out to the college in those instances. Yeah.
Are there any differences in what we talked about tonight or my daughters?
Are there any differences for military academies? And heck, yeah, if we're going military academy, you probably do want to come and like have her come and talk to us or set up a meeting because you need typically like a senator's letter. It's like some stuff. There's some stuff that needs to go on that journey. Was there another question that you had? So the question is around deferment. If a student is unable to, like the deferment, something goes wacky with it, how hard is it to apply again the next year? And it's the exact same process. The challenge really is that they're unsupported in doing it in terms of they need to walk through that on their own. So that's the big thing. You can't take a gap year with Seattle Promise. So there are like, gap years are a little tricky for us just because the US system isn't super built on that. So it's just something that's a little bit more of a conversation with the college for where they want to go. Yeah. The question is, with Seattle Promise, is there a minimum amount of credits they have to complete each quarter to maintain their Seattle Promise? It's 12. The answer is 12. Yeah, and that must win for the win. Okay. Oh, yes. If a student is not looking at a four-year school, do they still need to do the personal essays? They'll still be doing them in their English classes. I typically like to tell students to keep all of their doors open and then close them as decisions are made. So we encourage the student to make the choice for a no rather than the other side of things. However, we love trade school. We are strong advocates for trade school, and that is just a different process. It's not typically essay based, but it is way more about GPA. And there are apprenticeship programs through Seattle Promise at all of our campuses in Seattle. Okay, we're going, okay. So the question is around Seattle Promise and is it based on how much the financial for the families? The only requirement for Seattle Promise is that you graduate from a Seattle public school and that you complete the 3 requirements. So that's not based on finances at all. Okay, we'll keep going down the journey. Okay, so we've got some like 3 fun slides for tips for y'all, but some of them I think are like a little like we've talked about them. Number 1. Going to a college campus, seeing what it's actually like is one of the biggest things for students to be able to understand fit for themselves.
There are cute virtual tours for campuses that are on the East Coast. We tell them that every single college, like UW, every single material for UW it is a sunny day, and it is not sunny here. So like those kinds of things are the things that we are trying to look for. And I sometimes think about it if you were going to buy a car, because like so exciting, how much time would you spend on that journey? And that should be commensurate, but way more with our college applications. So it's that level of detail is what we're asking them to go into. And like I'm on a journey right now, it's so hard. And like there's so many things to consider, which is the exact same thing for our college process. So taking them to colleges, talking about fit, Thanksgiving is coming around the corner. If you guys are having a family dinner, we're talking about like, how do people choose their campuses, or what would they wish they had, or any of those kinds of conversations would be great for the table as those conversations are coming up. Talking about paying for college is a thing that kids all the time really are trying, like they're nervous to talk to you guys about. So if you can engage in that conversation, when we meet with our seniors and talk through this process, there are different ways you can frame this search. And if the search needs to be framed around finances, we have a ton of information about that. So plug for December 6th for our next night for financial aid. More tips for you. Taking advantage of what they have available. So our sports, our clubs meet here a lot during the school day. So we have a lot of community service clubs, so they can double dip and be engaged in their school community, get 60 hours, and do extracurriculars. Earth Club and Key Club are great examples of that. Attending what's available on campus for college visits are another great one. And then lastly, you guys are like a great organization. Let's be real. And we're still working on building our executive functioning skills. It's not a bad thing to make up a spreadsheet or explain to them, walk them through how to make a spreadsheet or a family calendar, or just some reminders to help with this process. Certainly they need to have agency, but it also is true that many of our students struggle with that first piece of those deadlines. So I've had parents be like, you need to apply for a scholarship once a week. I've had students who have had to go to a certain amount of college campuses by a certain amount of time, or college outreaches, or like you can name what you want it to be, but that organization can be really helpful as you're facilitating your student in this search. Yeah. 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 So the questions are on the student email. And you need to have the same email be attached to your College Board account as your apps. I certainly would have the same application email, and it's not a bad time to choose your email at your name, to be able to claim that if they haven't already, instead of like literally I have kids that are like mommy's favorite at gmail.com. And we get to have that conversation. But it doesn't need to be the same one, and it can be one that like forward to whatever they actually check, but it does need to be professional. On that note, they also should be locking down their social media if they haven't already. Colleges do look at student social media, so keeping that in mind as well, which we do tell our youth. Yes. So the questions are on college visits and do you need to schedule a visit? Depending on the size of the school, they'll have visit days. And then most campuses will have a tour running every day. So depending on, it's best if you can schedule it. Every opportunity a student has to engage with an admissions officer is a point in their favor for their ultimate admissions decision for that school. So like you're reaching out, emailing, coming on campus, those are all noted in application portals. I will say as well, there is an enrollment issue at college campuses. So most colleges are currently under enrolled. So our students are walking into a period in which campuses are wanting students. So that is beneficial, but college campuses, I typically would say reach out for scheduling that. So a fun tip was that not all colleges have them all in perpetuity. So reaching out sooner when you're closer to your college visit. Do you have a question?
Prior thinking that the works required to make them to be able to finish their, or
Yes.
is it the way that does that? And how does that? Or
So the question was around Seattle Promise and students transferring. Most public schools say, and private, but more so with public, save spots for transfer students. This local ones, particularly with Seattle Promise, will save spots for our students that are transferring in. The only kind of caveat I would say around that is around if there's a specific major that a student is applying for. So the most competitive majors at UW are better to apply for as an immediate in, like our engineering and business ones and the computer science ones. There are some spots saved for transfers in those ones, but not as many as there are if you applied as an initial freshman. That said, for every other type of like general major, yes, there are spots saved for transfer students. Yeah. The questions around college bound. What a treat, what a dream. Okay, so college bound is a scholarship that you would have signed up for in middle school. And there are specific financial requirements that you would have needed to have met in your student's 8th grade year. And for our current juniors, I think it was automatically,
Yes.
but our current seniors that you would have had to apply for it. So they've made that change. If you want to find out or confirm if you think your student is a college bound student, just let us know. And what it is tuition. Specific information, one sec.
So the way this college bound scholarship works is it's only available to public universities and colleges in Washington. And so I'm just saying a general example. So if Western's tuition was $6,000, you did the FAFSA, and they gave you $4,000, you have a $2,000 gap. The college bound scholarship kicks in and covers the rest of that $2,000. And so it's a tuition gap filler so that if you didn't meet all the financial aid requirements for certain colleges, then the college bound scholarship kicks in and fills that in.
Any more questions? Absolutely. So the question was around what do we advise our students to do around social media and like quote unquote locking that down. We would never expect students to stop posting because they love social media. We ask that students make sure it's private, and then even if it's private, we make sure that students are maybe going back through their posts and making sure everything is like somewhat appropriate. And just doing a deep dive on that. And then making sure that if someone does ask to follow them, that they're being thoughtful about who that might be. That's kind of our reference. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
And do you guys as a counselor team have kind of what would be those, like for different universities, what would be that range? It's like, okay, this GPA and this SAT, yeah, I think in this case you should submit it in the training.
Okay, I'm gonna do my system ways. So the question was around merit-based scholarships oftentimes have a GPA or an SAT or both requirement, and do we feel like we have an understanding of what those ranges are for colleges? Okay. Erica?
I will try to answer that. So actually most colleges have like a little chart that you can do that. So there's usually like a chart, like The y-axis has the SAT scores. And so you get these many scholarships. And then the x-axis has this GPA. And if you meet this, then you have this many scholarships. So here's a chart for sure, generally speaking. And I know I say that a lot because colleges are different, in terms of how they determine that criteria. 3.0 GPA, 1,000 on the SATs, those are national averages for most college applicants anyways. And so going beyond that will get you more scholarship money.
I'd also recommend, I'd also recommend, this is something we said in our presentation, but reaching out to the financial aid office, in like the most kind, least annoying way possible. I think like a lot of magic can happen, just like Ms. Sanders was alluding to, when we talk to our admissions officers. Like our intern went to Whitman and talked to an admissions officer. She forgot part of her application. And the admissions officer reached out to her and said, hey, you missed this part of your application. Do you want to submit it late? And they accepted it and she got in. So like that story, I think we encourage financial aid officers to reach out to our financial aid officers and ask. They might not always have great information, but it's not as far as once you get admission, calling back and saying, I really want to go to this school, but it's over my budget. What scholarships do you have available? Here's my criteria, I think is a really powerful thing. I graduated from where did I graduate from? Well, I graduated from Western a couple of years ago with my counseling degree. And I mean, this is like relevant-ish, like 3 years ago. And I was like, hey, I don't have enough money to pay for this. And they found $5,000 grant in 10 minutes, which is like possible. Maybe it's best case, I'm not sure, but it's definitely possible. Any questions? Okay. Okay. Oh, well, sorry. First of all, counseling Instagram and counseling website. Please follow us on IG. We have lots of good posts that our students make them, and they're really cute. As well as please, our counseling website, it has oodles of information, especially for kids like doing Running Start, thinking about Running Start, our Running Start page. It's fly. We also have lots of good information around like gotten a lot of emails on like the school profile, like what's the rank, how many kids are in our students graduating class, those kinds of questions on the website. If you go to the counseling center, at the bottom is our school profile, which has a lot of good info. And lastly, volleyball, or do you want to say something before volleyball?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you have friends, for example, who weren't able to come today, we're going to post a recording on our website, and all the resources like the future Naviance that we mentioned will be included below the video, so that as you're going through the presentation again, we will have the reference links right below it. And then there's a volleyball game. It is the varsity is playing right now.
Yeah.
Right now. So if you guys want to, you can go down to the gym.
Oh, yeah.
That way.
The name's on December 6th.
Oh. Oh, yay! And then for any senior parents, Financial Ignite is December 6th. We are going to walk you through what we think will be updates, right?
Yeah.
For the FAFSA TBD on what it looks like, but we have general knowledge on what kind of information to have ready for you to fill out the FAFSA or the WSFA. Yeah, and it's very different, so we're all going to learn together. More info on that.
All right,
Cool. Thank you so much. You guys are all wonderful. Thank you.